Yo, what up, what up? All right, I am super excited for this coaching session today. This is one of the best players I've ever coached, which means we can get really we can dive deep into the little stuff, which I love, the super analytical stuff. So going to be a really good coaching session. If you want to get better at MLB The Show, you for sure need to watch this video all the way through because there's so many little things that can help you out just for the average player. I'm coaching this guy, Mr. October. For you, sir, specifically, nicely done. You are a very, very good player. You did so many things right. And so we'll start with lineups, and then I'll go over the overarching themes that you specifically can work on to get better, which there's not that many. And then this is one of the ones where it's actually going to be good for us to watch the whole game all the way through, except I'm going to start about halfway through. So once we start watching the game, it's about 24 minutes. So it's only going to be about 12 minutes of watching, but there's so many little things that are going on that's worth talking about, and I think you guys are going to enjoy it. So thank you for sending me this, Mr. October. Hope this helps you out. Let's get into it. So one little thing with your lineup, as I always say, speed at the top, power in the middle, alternate righty-lefty. Your lineup is almost optimal. I would just switch Honus and your cap. Maybe it's just a thing where you like speed in the 8-hole. Like, this isn't the worst thing ever, but if it was me, I would have your cap 8-hole. The same reasoning is going to go for your opponent as well. I just really like switch hitters in the 8-hole because it kind of gives you a reset before you have to pinch hit. And it kind of forces your opponent to kind of just use whoever they have at the moment against your 8-hole hitter because it's not worth making a pitching change when they know you're probably going to pinch hit in the 9-hole at some points in the game. So that's all I would do, but your lineup is good. This is basically lefty, righty, lefty, lefty. So maybe swap Bellinger and Fox. I don't know. Switch hitters with even splits, it gets tough. You're fine. For your opponent, I really don't like Arenado in the 2-hole, and he's a little off with his righty-lefty. So the way I would set your opponent's lineup is I would go Cobb and then Marte, because Marte is basically a right-handed hitter because he mashes lefties. And then Snyder, and then Arenado, then Giambi, then Garver, then Stargell, then Reyes in the 8-hole. Additionally, your opponent should definitely be looking to use someone other than this Shane Bieber card. This Shane Bieber card is ass. Starting pitchers, like decent starting pitchers that are better than Shane Bieber, there's a couple of them that are actually cheaper than him as well. So I don't really know why he's using this guy, but that's just what I have to say. So for overarching themes for you, sir, make sure you're throwing more balls when you're ahead in the count with 2 strikes, specifically 0-2, 1-2. There were a couple at bats where you gave up hits because you're throwing like 2-seamers in the zone with an 0-2 count. So especially with someone you were playing that had a lot of trouble hitting off speed and was kind of swing happy outside of the zone, I would have liked to see you throw more balls when ahead in the count. This changes from game to game because if you're playing someone that just doesn't swing at balls, then it's probably better just to keep throwing strikes. But against your opponent specifically, would have liked to see you pick up on that he doesn't really like to take pitches and that throwing balls when ahead in the count could have saved you a couple hits that you gave up. On the flip side of things, I noticed you were struggling, or you were swinging a lot when you were way ahead in the count with no one on base. I specifically saw this twice with Willie Mays. The second time was here. And so actually two of your first 3 at bats, you swung 2-0 with Willie Mays with no one on base. So this is what I always talk about where taking is better in different counts and swinging is better in different situations. This is a situation where I'd probably just take this pitch every single time because even though Willie Mays is an insane hitter, great power hitter, he still has the 92 speed, 98 stealing, right? So you're probably going to get just as good of a pitch 2-1 as you are 2-0. And if you can get him to throw you a ball here, you're sitting pretty for this whole at bat. Plus, by swinging 2-0, like best case scenario, because there's no one on base, you're only going to get 1 run, right? So even just taking this pitch is better because you can kind of pick up on what your opponent likes to throw 2-0. And then if you get in a situation later in the game where it's like 2 runners on and a 2-0 count, you can predict that pitch and then maybe swing that time. But you did this twice in the first 5 innings, swinging 2-0 with Mays. Granted, that was a really good swing and probably should have been a home run. But we're not looking at results-based thinking. We're looking at what was the right decision to make. I probably would have taken that pitch. All right, talking probably too much about that. I'm sure you get it. Third thing, seemed like you were struggling a lot to hit Zach Britton. Granted, your opponent was donning a lot. I don't know if you generally struggle with high sinkers or if it was just this game against Zach Britton specifically. But if you're struggling to hit high sinkers, just go into practice mode and face Zach Britton, the hitting tool, the practice tool, or whatever, and make sure you're the home team. Or maybe you'd want to be the away team since his primary is a sinker. Yeah, you'd probably want to be the away team because he'd throw you nothing but sinkers. But that's if you're struggling to hit sinkers. Otherwise, sometimes you just have a bad game against certain guys. One thing I will say for anyone watching is that if you feel like you're lost at the plate when you're facing any particular pitcher, specifically one like Zach Britton who is kind of only has 2 speeds, the best thing you can do for the game state like that individual time is to just pick fast or slow and just commit to it no matter what. And I think I went over this in one of my earlier coaching videos. But if you feel like you're in the rocking chair, or if you are just really struggling against a pitcher, just commit to something. It's better to swing early a bunch of times at off speed, and then if he throws you an off speed, you can hit a home run, than to just constantly be trying to catch up in the rocking chair. So that's my advice. If you're in the middle of a game and you just can't touch someone, at least for an inning, just commit to one speed of pitch and just pretend that every pitch is a fastball or whatever, and then swing as if, and maybe you'll get a couple hits. But overall, one final thing about you, sir, is I don't think your bench is very optimal. Granted, this stuff is kind of tricky because people are a lot more comfortable with different cards. But I would like to see, first of all, I don't really think Ichiro is necessary unless you absolutely rake with him. I would like to see a more traditional left-handed bench bat here, mostly because your outfield of Mays, Griffey, and Bellinger doesn't need a defensive replacement late in the game, which is a lot of the value that Ichiro provides. And also none of those guys need a pinch runner either. And so I don't really think Ichiro's doing a lot for your bench unless you really trust him and you hit insanely well with him. Also, I don't really like Mike Trout on your bench because Mike Trout has reverse splits, and so technically he's a left-handed hitter, so your bench is essentially 3 lefties and 1 righty and 1 switch, whereas we would want 2 righties, 2 lefties, and 1 switch. So I'd like to see you remove Trout for a more traditional right-handed bat, maybe someone like Frank Thomas, because it actually is a big deal later in this game where you kind of don't have a righty to go to. And so I think this game was a good example of that. Granted, again, if you rake with Trout, if you're comfortable hitting lefties with Trout, then keep him in there. But a lot of the benefit that Trout provides is the reverse split and the speed, which once again, you don't need speed replacements for the starting outfield that you have. So maybe work on your bench. Maybe if it was me personally, I'd maybe go like Yelich and Frank Thomas if you have Yelich, or like Ted Williams and Frank Thomas. But that's just my opinion. So like I said, if you're super comfortable with those guys, stick with it. All right, we're going to look at 2 specific instances before the 24-minute mark, and then we're just going to watch the game. So this is something that you did really, really, really good. So there's 2 outs and a runner in scoring position, and you have a 3-0 count with Chipper Jones. The hitter you have on deck is Cody Bellinger. It's important to understand that there's no situation where your opponent actually wants to face Cody Bellinger with the bases loaded here, especially in a 1-run game. So your opponent is going to come after you in this 3-0 count. He just is. And so the correct play here is this is one of those counts, again, where sometimes it's better to swing or sometimes it's better to take. This is one of those situations where even though it's a 3-0 count, you absolutely need to have the green light here because if you get a hit, you're scoring a run, and you're pretty much guaranteed something in the zone in this situation unless he misses his spot. So the correct play here is to just sit on the fastball and swing as if, and that's exactly what you did. Like, you even swung early because you were sitting on the fastball so hard, but you end up driving the run in. I just want to say good approach there. Again, not going to talk about the fact that you swung early. It's more about the decision making that you were sitting fastball and you swung. So good job there. That was the right thing to do. One more little thing. I talked about this in the last coaching video. 2 on, 1 out, pitcher up. You either need to bunt here or you need to strike out on purpose. And most of the time I'm just striking out on purpose here. because you definitely don't want to ground into a double play, especially considering your leadoff hitter is Francisco Lindor, who absolutely rakes against right-handed pitching, and it's too early in the game for your opponent to make a pitching change, especially with 2 outs in the inning. So you actually did end up trying to swing in this at-bat. It worked out for you because you struck out looking, as crazy as that sounds, but like this 3-1 count, I'm pretty sure you're swinging, or you foul off a 3-2 or something. Yeah, so like 3-2, you just got to strike out there, because if you ground into a double play, it's infinitely worse than just letting Lindor hit with a runner in scoring position and 2 outs. So that's a little thing. He strikes you out, which works in your favor, but that's the thing. That's always the decision that sucks, because striking out on purpose just sucks, but it's the right thing to do there, especially with Lindor coming up next. So, all right, here we go. So 23-52. And then we'll just watch the game from here. So Blyleven threw 4 2/3, giving up 2 runs. I just wanted to say that this is a bad decision by your opponent, even given the fact that you were not hitting Zach Britton very well. Your opponent's looking at maybe only 2 to 3 pinch hit opportunities in the 9 innings, assuming it doesn't go to extras. He absolutely needs to be pinch hitting here, considering it's a 1-run game. And you're not going to make a pitching change because Blyleven's only at 58 pitches and he's been cruising. So this is one of those opportunities where your opponent can guarantee a power lefty versus a right-handed pitcher, someone like Christian Yelich, Ted Williams again, and with 1 swing of the bat he can tie the game. So I really don't like leaving Zach Britton in here, even despite the fact that you weren't hitting him terribly well. So I think this is a mistake from your opponent. Alright, so let's just start watching the game. And the reason we're going to watch the game all the way through from this point on is because there's so many little things that I want to talk about. We're actually going to skip through 8 minutes around the 25-minute mark, so it'll go even faster. So if you're worried about time, don't worry about it. But alright, so little thing, 2-1, no one on base, Honus Wagner at the plate, you should be taking every time, which you do. 3-1, you should doubly be taking every time because you have 96 speed and probably a pinch hitter coming up, and you rip a double in the gap. So nice at bat there, did everything right. And now this is what I want to talk about. This is one of those high leverage situations, those break points in the game. So this is probably the most difficult decision you had to make the entire game, and you can debate back and forth honestly what's correct here, especially given the fact that you're winning right now. But you decide to pinch hit here, and I think it's the right decision because it's one of those points where if you put the ball over the wall here with how low scoring this game has been, with how your opponent's kind of been struggling at the plate, if you can go up 5-2 here, it's pretty much GG, unless your opponent suddenly wakes up at the plate. But I really like the pinch hit here. This is a very, very hard decision because Blyleven's only at like 60 pitches, and he's been doing well. This is also one of those decisions that changes based on how much leverage you have with your available bullpen. So because your bullpen was very rested going into this game, this is an easier decision to make. If your bullpen was super tired, you probably have to leave Blyleven in here, but you have the luxury of being able to pinch hit because your bullpen was energized for this game. And this is something that changes game to game. This is why it's always important to know the state of your bullpen before you enter a game, because it will change what decision is correct throughout individual game states. So I really like this pinch hit here a lot because, like I said, your opponent's been cruising with Britton. He also just let Britton hit, which means he's showing a large commitment to not taking Zach Britton out. Like, he literally gave up a pinch hit to leave Britton in. And so you can almost guarantee yourself a righty versus lefty matchup here, and you do pinch hit with Pujols. One thing I would like to see, and this will come up again later, one little thing that you can do better is I would love to see you check your opponent's bullpen here, because if he has a righty warming up that he can go to, it changes your decision a little bit. You probably still go with Pujols, but if he doesn't have a righty warming up, then it's a no doubt instant decision to pinch hit with Pujols here. So you pinch hit with Pujols and he doesn't make a pitching change, so that works out for you. Unfortunately, you don't get the run home this inning, but this is the right decision. So like I said, it's very tough. It was amplified by the fact that you have a rested bullpen, so you can get away with doing this more often than you can if your bullpen was tired. But that was a good decision there. So let's skip ahead to 33, and then we'll actually start watching. Alright, so we got Wade Davis facing Ketel Marte, strikes him out. Bottom 7, still a 1-run game. You got Willie Stargell at the plate. I probably would have gone with a lefty here. I think you have Josh Hader warming up. You decide to leave Davis in versus Stargell. You also have to be aware of the fact that Willie Stargell is a very good candidate for platooning because he's a card that not a lot of people use, and he's really especially useful against right-handed pitching. Like, hitting lefties with Stargell kind of sucks. So it's pretty likely that your opponent is platooning Stargell. So the way that you can check this is you can go into the menu and look at your opponent's bench and see if there's anyone he would potentially platoon with Stargell. And if there is, you would ask yourself, would I rather face Stargell with Wade Davis, or would I rather face X replacement with Josh Hader? So you didn't check any of this. I think you were just really trusting Wade Davis here. But if Stargell puts one over the wall here, you are actually losing now. So I would have gone to a lefty here, especially with Jose Reyes on deck for your opponent. It really doesn't matter who you throw against Jose Reyes, so you could get lefty. You could get a lefty-lefty if he's not platooning, and then you could get a neutral result in the at-bat afterwards. So this is high leverage enough situation. Once again, if he hits a home run, you're going to be losing, that I would probably just go to the lefty here. Again, it's helpful that your bullpen is rested, but you end up leaving Wade Davis in, which I do think is a mistake, but it's close. Once again, there's a lot of little things in this game that are close. This is something you do amazing that I want to point out to the viewers here. So this is a really weird hit animation. Let's actually watch this in normal time. So this is a really weird hit animation, and you're kind of getting an awkward like animation from your pitcher. And so you just throw to first base and get the out in this situation. This is, I cannot stress enough how good of a decision this is, because if you throw to second and get some stupid animation and then he's got runners on first and second, it's so much worse than if you just take the out here. Like, yeah, it sucks that you got this bad animation. If you got the bad animation and threw to second, a lot of people would say, well, that bad animation screwed me. But really, you can play to what's happening, and because you got the bad animation, because the hit was so weird, you just threw to first and took the out. So that is so good. It's like so many people would try to throw to second base there and screw themselves. So very, very nice job, and you end up getting rewarded for it because he doesn't score in this inning. One little thing with Wade Davis as well, just with him specifically, when you're playing a player that seems to be on stuff, I like to throw four-seamers a lot, because if people are sitting sinker cutter, it really messes them up if you just throw something straight. This is something that I do with Raleigh Fingers as well, and Dennis Eckersley. So you actually get him out on a four-seamer. So that's just something I wanted to talk about. Alright, so now let's look at his situation in your bullpen. So you're going to be going to a righty here for sure, because Garver's leading off. And so I like that you chose Fingers, because you want, if you can, you want to rest Nin and Wagner this game, and then you want Jansen to close. So Fingers is really the only decision here. And then if he goes to a lefty, you can go to Hader the next inning. So nice job there. This is also a funny at bat, because people love to complain about getting auto shifted, but like you'll never hear them talk about situations like this where you actually take a bad swing and you get a double because it was an auto shift. Like, people only want to talk about when they ground into the shift. They never want to talk about when they get a hit because of the shift. I just think it's funny, but spoiler alert, I guess. Oh, one little thing too. I'm not a huge fan of this interface. Maybe you just like it because it looks clean, but I really like seeing the speed that my guys have, just so I can kind of gauge what's happening as the play's going on. I guess if you use the same guys enough, you kind of already know, but I prefer looking at the interface that has speed there. So just a little thing. It's pure preference, honestly. But yeah. Alright, here's a situation where because you have a left-handed hitter up, you need to be having the quickest bat of all time. Like, if you're flailing and off speed, it just happens, because Pulling the ball to the right side is so good here. You get the runner to third with 1 out. So you have to have a really fast bat here, which you do. You pull it foul, so that's good. It's very important that you hit the ball to the right side here, preferably on a fly out or a ground out, because it's going to infinitely increase your chances of scoring this game, or in this inning. If you had a right-handed hitter up, it would be equally as important to be swinging late at everything, to have a slow bat, or at least try to have good timing on pitches away, or just sit on pitches away and just take stuff that's inside. This is just general baseball, but hitting the ball to the right side of the field here is so good. So that's what you should be looking to do. That's an insane take. Nice. So it works out perfectly. So you get the exact result that you want. Now you got to run on third with 1 out, so if sac fly works, depending on if your opponent leaves his infield back, a ground out will score a run, which your opponent should definitely be putting his infield in here. But your opponent opts for another line of play, which is to intentionally walk Honus Wagner to set up the double play and get to the pitcher's spot. So this is like the craziest, most intricate shit ever, these next couple instances, so bear with me. But we're going to get super analytical here. So let's look at what's going on. Let's go back a little bit. So let's look at what's going on. Hoffman at this point has thrown an inning and a third, and he's at 28 pitches. So honestly, your opponent is just looking for an opportunity to take Trevor Hoffman out of the game. And you need to understand that, especially given this intentional walk, that your opponent is probably trying to look to match whatever pinch hit decision you make. So you need to be okay with either putting in a lefty that you can hit lefty-lefty with, or burning 2 of your bench bats. So because he's going to make a pitching change. So when you go to Lou Gehrig here, spoiler alert again, when you go to Lou Gehrig, you need to ask yourself, am I okay hitting lefty-lefty with Lou Gehrig, or am I okay hitting righty-lefty with Mike Trout? And this is once again a huge spot where if you just had Frank Thomas instead of Mike Trout here, it would be so good because you wouldn't care. You'd be like, I'll go with Gehrig. It's already the 8th inning, so bench depth isn't that big of a deal. Hopefully it doesn't go to extras, but it's definitely worth burning 2 bench bats here. If this was Frank Thomas, you could be like, okay, I'll go Gehrig, and then if he matches me, I'll go Thomas. And then you just have Frank Thomas versus a lefty, which is amazing, especially given the fact that a deep fly ball scores a run here. Again, what you could actually do is you could back out of the screen and check your opponent's bullpen as well to try to set up, like, who is he warming up? Do I like this matchup? Like, if he's warming up a lefty that you're super comfortable with, like, if for some reason you just rake against Josh Hader and he has Josh Hader in the bullpen, maybe you're okay just leaving Lou Gehrig in. Like, this is something you have to, this is something you have to think about. And this is the second time this game where I think checking your opponent's bullpen would have helped you out a lot. I think it's definitely something that people don't do enough. It's a really valuable tool. You can do it as many times as you want as long as you have time in the pause menu. You can always see what your opponent's setting up for the future by checking your opponent's bullpen. So you put Gehrig in. So once again, just to reiterate one more time for everyone watching, by putting Lou Gehrig in, you need to either be okay hitting lefty-lefty with Lou Gehrig, or you need to be okay with burning Lou Gehrig entirely for a right-handed bat afterwards, because your opponent's going to change for sure. Alright, so he goes to Jesus Luzardo, which is kind of a weird choice, but you end up putting in Trout again. I think this is the right decision given this individual game, but once again would have liked to see someone other than Trout on your bench for this situation. But Trout actually, specifically here, is good because he has the potential to beat out a double play because he's so fast, 94 speed. You also have speed on base. God, there's so much to talk about in this situation. It's actually crazy. Okay, first of all, you're never stealing here with Honus Wagner because getting thrown out means you have 2 outs, which means you have to get a hit to get the run home. Also, even if you steal successfully, he's just going to walk Mike Trout. He's going to set up the double play again. and your leadoff hitter is Francisco Lindor, who hits lefties much worse than righties. So there's never a situation where stealing here is good. In fact, every situation where you try to steal here is actually bad. Even if you get a stolen base, it's actually still bad for you because you're just going to probably ground out into a double play because Lindor is so much worse against lefties than righties. So yeah, you're never stealing here. Also, given the game state, given the fact that Mike Trout can beat out slow ground balls, given the fact that Mike Trout has enough power to get the ball to the outfield on a good swing, you should be hyper aggressive in this at bat. Striking out is so terrible for you in this situation that honestly I'd probably just be swinging at anything that's close I'd be swinging, because once again you might beat out a double play even if it's a bad swing on a low pitch, but if you get to 2 outs with runners on first and third and Lindor up, you're kind of screwed because once again Lindor hits lefties so much worse, just from his attributes. So you need to just like anywhere close in the zone, like if it's above this line and I think it's going to be a strike, I'm just swinging at it every time in this situation. And I'm trying to get under the ball, obviously, because fly ball is infinitely better than a ground ball here. So like anything above here, if it's close to the zone, I'm probably swinging at it. You just have to be that aggressive because literally a fly ball gets you a run, and this run is so huge. So that was a ton to talk about just for this little thing, but it's these little things that really add up that really make a difference, and that's why I think it's going to be so useful for you guys to watch this video all the way through. And you are being hyper aggressive here, so that was a good at bat. So we get the run home, which is what we needed. I think you might have been seeing if you could pinch hit for Lindor there, but there's really no one to go to. You could go to Alomar, but he also hits lefties worse, so it's kind of a wash. Alright, here's another really intricate thing after this at bat. Nice sequence, by the way. Slider, forkball. Your opponent obviously had a fast bat and was just waiting for the sinker there. So your opponent, in my opinion, is probably platooning at least 2 guys in his lineup. The ones that come to mind are Giambi and Stargell because they're kind of weird people that have insanely skewed stats towards right-handed pitching. So in this situation, he brings in Juan Soto. I would definitely be going to Josh Hader here for a lot of reasons. First of all, you're up by 2 now, so one individual run doesn't burn you. So having a bad matchup in this at bat specifically isn't the worst thing in the world because even worst case scenario, it's only going to be 4-3, right? So because there's no one on base, I definitely would have matched with Hader here because it forces him to burn 2 bench bats. And remember, burning bench bats for your opponent here is even worse than normal because he wants to platoon those guys. At least I think he does because they're weird picks to have in your lineup. And so when people are platooning, burning 2 bench bats in the same plate appearance is infinitely better than against someone who's not platooning because it burns through their bench so much faster. So I would have loved to see you go to Josh Hader here, if for no other reason as well that the top of his lineup is extremely lefty heavy. His 1, 2, 3 is Cobb, Arenado, and another lefty who I can't think of right now, a power lefty. But yeah. So if you go to Hader here, you're probably at a disadvantage because he'll swap out Soto. You're at a disadvantage at this at bat, but you're good against Ty Cobb. You can pitch around Arenado if you have to, and then it's another lefty again. So I really would have gone to a lefty here. People also underestimate this Juan Soto card. If you leave a righty in versus Juan Soto, it's pretty much like pitching to Ted Williams, especially on lower difficulty where the vision doesn't matter as much. This card is really good against right-handed pitching, so I would have loved to see a pitching change here for all of the reasons that I talked about, but there's a lot of them. And what's funny is, given the result of this at-bat, what's correct actually changes in the next at-bat, which is funny to me. So you give up the bomb with Soto. So now, so I would have loved to see Hader in before, but now that you gave up the home run, and you're facing Cobb, Arenado, and a lefty, it's actually now correct to leave Raleigh fingers in because Cobb has even splits. Cobb doesn't necessarily hit for Cobb doesn't necessarily hit for a lot of power. He does have some power, but he's not like a power hitter. And also, Arenado is, in my opinion, way more scary than Ty Cobb in this situation. So now, given this game state, just one at bat later, it's actually correct to leave Raleigh fingers in my opinion. So this is the right play now, but I don't know if you were thinking about it. It's just, there's so much to go over in this game. I love it so much. So he gets a single with Ty Cobb. So now you need to be insanely weary of the steal, which you do a very good job of. Your opponent's trying to mind game you, but you're also mind gaming your opponent. I probably would have gotten lazy here and just done a slide step every single time because I don't want to deal. I just don't want him to steal here at all, but it does put yourself at risk to hang one versus Nolan Arenado. So I actually think what you do here versus what he's trying to do is really good in this at bat. You're mixing in the slide step. Sometimes you're not slide stepping. And also, obviously, a double play is super good here. And on a 2-strike count, he's probably not stealing now, so you probably don't have to slide step. And you get the pop out. So super good at bat. Now that you're facing the lefty, Duke Snider, you for sure go to Hader here. So yeah, that's a good play. Snyder's another one that your opponent could be platooning, which he brings in Baez, which is kind of weird. But even though now you're at a very scary game, very scary point in the game with Baez versus lefty as the go-ahead run, you've made the right decision here. And remember, your opponent's bench is getting very low, and it could have been lower if we had done what we talked about with the Juan Soto at bat. So just something to improve on. But you get the pop out, which is awesome. Alright, you don't do anything in the top of the ninth, so we'll just skip ahead. So, Frank Thomas, Ketel Marte, both worse against righties. So the very obvious move is to go to Kenley Jansen here. So nice. Jansen's probably gonna want to throw the whole inning, but it depends on what happens. So this is just highly unfortunate. He gets a very early rolled over infield single. And this is just a point in the game where it's a mental thing. It's a battle of mental fortitude now, right? Because and you can kind of tell who's winning the battle of mental fortitude by the first pitch that's thrown. So this pitch is pretty important just to gain information. So I really like that you're throwing a low changeup and you were trying to throw it for a ball. I really like all of that because you're just trying to throw something up there to see what he does and see where he's at mentally. And he swings very early at the changeup. So based on that swing alone, you can tell that he's more nervous than you are. And so you need to put that in your head to make yourself feel better and to understand that if you just make the right pitches here, you're going to come out on top because your opponent is so anxious given this situation. You can tell just by that swing. So I really like that you went changeup first pitch. He's also even early on this sinker low. And so here's a pitch that I throw a lot that you'd be surprised how often people swing at this pitch, especially in situations where they're being over anxious or they're hyped up. Throwing a sinker right down the middle but like way below the zone, like pitching with classic, I would start the cursor probably like here. Just based on how the pitch looks, it doesn't look like anyone would ever swing in it, but you'd be surprised how many double plays in big situations I've got by putting a sinker right here and having it end up like right here. It's actually crazy how often people swing at it this year, and might have something to do with people using strike zone. Like, it's probably too low of a pitch for someone not using strike zone to bite at, but it's actually a pitch where you're more likely to swing when you're using strike zone, which is kind of oxymoronic. But Marte isn't that fast, only 75 speed, and so double play should be the end game here. And so on the 0-2 count, given how anxious your opponent is, given that how good a double play is for you, I would like to see a sinker like down here for this pitch. But your pitch selection that you actually threw was good too. Just busting him in with a cutter. But you could have got 2 outs there, maybe. Maybe. You should have at least tried it once. Alright, so... Alright, this is the last big thing in the game. There's so many reasons for this. Okay. So now you're facing Willie Stargell, who is the go-ahead run and who mashes righties. But the correct play here is to leave Kenley Jansen in for, once again, so many reasons. So, Willie Stargell, go-ahead run, right? We know your opponent's bench is low. So the odds that he's going to pinch run for Willie Stargell is low, and Willie Stargell is slow as hell. So let's say Willie Stargell hits a double and ties the game. Well, that's not the worst thing in the world because the odds of Willie Stargell scoring from second base on a single are really low because he's so slow, right? Really the only outcome here that's like really bad is if he hits a home run, obviously, because you lose the game on the spot. But like that's the only thing that's really bad. Additionally, once again, we said Willie Stargell is very slow, so if you get a ball on the ground, you can turn a double play very easily. Also, given the state of your bullpen now, the only two arms you have left are a semi-tired Rob Nen and Billy Wagner. So you're not really in this spot, once again going to rested bullpen leverage, you're not really in a good spot to make a pitching change here because if you end up, like if Billy Wagner throws to one batter, or two batters, and then you have to go to Rob Nen, you literally have no more pitchers left, and they're already tired. So by making a pitching change here, you're setting yourself up to just lose the game instantly if this goes to extras. So unfortunately, you just have to bite the bullet and pitch to Willie Stargell here because Kenley Jansen still has so much energy. He's probably your best reliever. You just have to try to get this out. And once again, Jose Reyes on deck, switch hitter with even splits. Doesn't really matter who you throw at him. So if you can get through this at bat, it's actually a neutral for you next at bat to leave Jansen in. So it's actually looking good for you moving forward because his 7-hole is a neutral and his 8-hole is an advantage for you because he's probably, given the fact that his catcher is 8th, he probably is not running a backup catcher, I would think. At least when I run my catcher 8th, I don't do that. And again, his bench is low. So, lots and lots of reasons to leave Jansen in here, and I just wanted to talk about them. So, let's see if you can pull out this dub, sir. Again, another spot in the 1-2 count where I would have tried the sinker thing way below the zone. At least try it. I mean, there's no way you could have tried it if you didn't even know it existed when this game was played. But that's just something to maybe keep in mind moving forward. So you walk Stargell, but that's okay, right? Like, this walk would be so much worse if you had put Billy Wagner in, right? So... And again, now that Stargell's on base with his 30-something speed, the odds that he puts one in the gap, he might not even score Stargell here. So, like, the only result that was bad for you in that at-bat was a home run. And here he pinch hits Josh Bell for Jose Reyes, which I guess is okay. But I don't even know if your opponent has a shortstop to play after this. Someone that can play shortstop. So I don't know. This is kind of all in from your opponent, which I guess is the right move given the fact of he can probably win with an extra base hit, maybe. But once again, you're rewarded by making the right decision of leaving Jansen in because now you got 2 outs facing a righty catcher and your opponent doesn't have anyone to go to. So he just has to try to do it with a righty-righty matchup. And you dot the changeup, get the strikeout, get the dub. So, very nicely done, sir. Like I said, you did so many things right. Try to keep in mind some of the things that I recommended for you. Throw more balls when you're ahead in the count with 2 strikes. Take more pitches when you have 2-0 counts with guys with good speed and no one on base, specifically Willie Mays in this game. If you're struggling to hit high stinkers or Zach Britton or both, go into practice mode and work on your bench a little bit. I think your bench can be improved. But overall, hope this was helpful for everyone. If you would like to be coached by me, find me on Twitter at CBrevMLB, at me, and then I'll follow you, and then we can talk in DMs. But yeah, thank you for sending me this content. Thank you for allowing me to coach you, sir. And I will see y'all in the next one. Peace.